Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Just want to let you know that this is not a 5-minute warning. This is our 5-minute pre-roll. So we generally like starting things just a little bit early. We're not going to actually start the actual presentation. This is our chance to talk to our panelists. Kind of all of us get a warm up a little bit and get the mouth muscles moving and the brain muscles thinking. So I just want to quickly introduce, for those of you who are tuned in, we've got Megan Casey and Hannah Grossman, two UX professionals
Hey
here at
guys.
The
Hi.
Nerdery. So let's go ahead and just real quickly, Hannah, tell me a little bit about what your role within the UX department is and where you got your start.
I love the architecture. I primarily focus on information architecture and as well as some upfront research. Really, our roles within the user experience department are pretty versatile. So I'm not a visual designer, but I do everything but the visual design.
And so so your role, though, both you and Hannah, or I can talk. This is why we do the pre-roll. Megan, you do content strategy, and both of you get started very early in the process of
Ideally,
any
yes.
engagement.
Yep. We both like to get in at the very beginning, and we'll talk through some of this in the talk, but really understand the business goals and the context in which people are making decisions about their web properties or apps or whatever it is that they're working on. So we do business discovery and user research, hopefully on every single project, so that we can really help people make informed decisions.
Right. So there's actually a whole lot of other steps that goes into the actual UX engagement. We're really talking about that maybe, let's say, if there's 4 or 5 slices of the pie, we're just having our first go at the first slice. Is the decision making, the big moving pieces that goes into defining what we're going to do and why we're going to do it.
Yeah, yep, that's what we'll be talking about today. And it's interesting. I actually, my favorite part of the process is after you've decided upon the overall strategy, getting to the architecture and defining the features and doing the experience design. But it's obviously absolutely integral to have a solid foundation and to know that the strategy is sound so that when you do build the really cool shiny thing, it's also going to speak to the right people and say the right things.
And that's why Hannah and I make a good team, I think, because while I like the building of the thing, I really, really, really like the beginning part, figuring out how we're going to achieve business goals while satisfying user needs and figuring out what that strategy is so that we can build the thing that's going to work for our clients.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're a couple minutes away. This is where I just want to make sure, and people that are tuning in, can you see the opening slide, and can you hear the audio okay? If I could just get, you go to use the questions panel, if you'd be willing to just shoot a little, like, is audio levels okay? Can you hear everyone okay? Yes, yes, yep. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. Um, so the the actual webinar will start in about 2 minutes. So let's go ahead and pose the question: where did you get your start in UX? Since UX is not something that Ivy League colleges have been offering for ages, let alone state schools or anything. It seems to be built on experiences. Where did you get your experience to move into UX?
I actually did some freelance web development work in college to pay the bills. I made my very first attempt at the HTML, customizing my MySpace page in high school.
Get out.
Yeah, no. So I got into freelancing. That kind of morphed into understanding that in order to develop a successful application, it had to be designed the right way in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I graduated from college, I loved it so much. I felt that I could make a difference in this industry, so I just decided to not pursue what I got a degree in and do this instead. And it's worked out so far pretty well.
And for me, I am going to date myself a little bit saying that the interwebs weren't really a thing when I graduated from college. So I'm a little bit older than Hannah. So I really had no idea what this was at that point, and either did a lot of people, because it was the days of Netscape and AOL chat rooms, or maybe about about as far as things went. So my background is in communications, public relations, and marketing and employee communications. So through all of those experiences, I've always had a really keen desire to understand what the business is trying to accomplish and what people want from businesses and organizations, which translated quite well into user experience once I started working on intranets and secure websites. Was sort of my first foray into this kind of work, and now here I am.
Well, super. We're going to go ahead and get things kicked off. So if you're actually driving the presentation, Hannah, so if you would feel like you could click the button. Okay, everyone. I want to thank you all for tuning in to our design science. This is actually, we've got a couple of different webinars here at the Nerdery. We have 3. We've got our Nerdery primers, which is actually, we consider this particular talk a primer level talk. We start at 10,000 feet and we bring ourselves down to about a 5,000 to 2,000 foot understanding, whereas we've also got nuts and bolts, which is where our tech talks are. So we've got our primers, which is a wide audience. It's meant for business owners, entrepreneurs, people who are in design agencies, people who are in the industry or want to learn more about it. Our design science is actually usually specific to UX, visual design, information architecture. It's both meant for people that want to get into the industry and those that are in it. So again, there's a little bit of crossover in those audiences. And then again, we do have the tech talks, which are really nuts and bolts discussion. Last week we had one on Android and some of the new Google I/O announcements. So you can go ahead and check the blog.nerdery.com to check that out. My name is Ryan Carlson. I am your host for these wonderful events that we put on here. My job is to understand enough to be dangerous about what we're talking about, facilitate conversations, do editing on the blog, and then also do a weekly or multi-weekly podcast called the Nerdcast. And you can check those out on iTunes, searching for Nerdcast or Nerdery. And my job is to showcase the brains, time, and talent of those here at the Nerdery. So we're going to move on to the next piece here. So some people don't know who the Nerdery is. Now, the cool thing about the Nerdery is that we make stuff. We've got almost 1.8 million hours worth of development. We've almost concluded 7,000 projects. Been in business for about 8 years and continue to grow. There is no lack of demand for people wanting all the things. So we're a real fun shop to work for. So if you're thinking about getting into this industry, you can check out nerdery.com/jobs. We actually have a UX apprenticeship program that's starting up. So those of you who are in the UX worlds or want to get into the UX things, we do have an apprenticeship program starting up. So you can check that out on our website. The other thing that I want to make sure that you understand is that it's not just the websites. We make mobile applications, which this topic is about, websites, embedded systems, cool touchscreen displays for like museums and educational facilities, lots of social media applications. We're actually one of the preferred developers for the Facebooks. So we make a lot of those applications for big names, big business, and small mom and pops. So we do projects from small scale to big scale, all the way up to big giant CRM, ERP, fancy acronym type stuff for enterprise level implementations. So the next thing is that we are technology agnostic, which means we program in all the things. We've got all the flavors of the rainbow. We're the Baskin Robbins of programming shops. So we don't have one particular discipline that we shoehorn people into. We can meet the needs of whatever the client might have. And we like to partner. So the big difference is there are some shops that say, okay, you want to have a vanilla ice cream cone. Well, you're going to get it. We might tell you that vanilla is boring, that a little bit of chocolate or cherry on top might be what you need. So we like to look at this as a partnership. And this talk is actually a lot about how we partner as a technology consultant with all of our potential clients and helping you making sure you're making the right choices. So herein ends the sermon and or the sales pitch. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that this is how this information is brought about. The Nerdery wants to make sure that we can provide this information to all that want to hear. Now, we'd like your participation, more specifically, using the questions panel in the GoToWebinar. So you've all used that. I already solicited your help on audio checking. So ask those questions. We will be using up most of the time for today, but we will try and save time at the end for questions. And you can tweet and promote what you like at #DesignScience. And lastly, I really urge you, if you have that burning question that did not get answered, email us at primers@nerdery.com, and I will see that your question has gotten to our panelists, and we will respond to you. So we're happy to engage and provide and share our knowledge. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to a talk that actually featured at a mobile summit. OMG, we need a mobile app. Now, the reason why we're doing this is that it's very often that people come to us with a napkin idea saying, I've been told I think I need to go the mobiles, or they have an idea, a very, very specific idea of what they want to implement. And again, part of that consultative process is what we do at the Nerdery. So we're going to talk about the top of the funnel, where your people bring in their ideas, and we're going to help decide what you need to do. So I'd like to turn things over to our two subject matter experts, Hannah Grossman and Megan Casey.
Thanks for the introduction, Ryan. Yes, today we are going to talk about a topic that, if any of you have had any direct mobile app design experience, have probably heard a lot. The client says, we need something mobile and we need it right now. We're going to talk to you about how to validate that need, number one, and then from there, how to decide what the right mobile thing is for you.
Yes. So, hi, I'm Megan Casey. I'm a content strategist here at the Nerdery, the first content strategist. This has been an exciting and fun topic for Hannah and I to work on together. Maybe using the question thing in GoToWebinar. If people want to let us know what discipline they most associate themselves with, so whether you're a designer, a UX person, an IA, content person, project manager, developer, just be interesting to kind of know who we've got with us today.
And we also know that based on registrations, we have a lot of individuals who are business owners, entrepreneurs.
Great.
So we really would hope that this talk can speak directly to them trying to make these tough decisions and
Definitely.
start as a nice warm conversation where they can put their toe in the water. So.
Yes, definitely.
Excellent. And hopefully then it'll also get them familiar with kind of some of the terms that we like to throw around when we're doing our UX work. Obviously, there are a lot of moving parts when you're talking about designing a mobile thing. And so hopefully we'll shed some light for those business owners on kind of what the best process is and how to work best with your designers. I'm Hannah Grossman. I'm a user experience designer here at the Nerdery. And like Megan said, we'll try and keep this talk as general as possible, because we are really here to talk to people on kind of all different aspects of the project. So to get started, we do want to define a few key terms for you who maybe are not familiar with them, or just to get us all on the same page. The first one, when we are talking about responsive or responsive design, what we mean is a single code base that adapts how content and features display depending on the size of the screen that the site is viewed on. Responsive design also, if you've heard the term adaptive, we're kind of rolling those all up into responsive, and that's what we'll be talking about.
Yes, and mobile optimized is typically a separate website. So you might have an m.nerdery.com that's designed specifically for use on a mobile device. So sometimes it actually does use the same or similar code base, but it's a separate experience from your regular desktop experience.
When we say native app, we mean a program designed to run on the operating system of a computer or a device like a phone that often uses device native features as a part of the functionality. We will specifically be referencing Android and iOS or iPhone development, but there are others out there, Windows Mobile and BlackBerry, a little bit of BlackBerry. We don't talk about BlackBerry much.
Not very much. And then user experience. The key thing here, the way that we like to talk about it, is it's really finding that kind of middle of the Venn diagram between business goals and user needs, and making sure that whatever you're designing helps people get the information they want or complete a task in a way that helps the business or organization that created it.
And another kind of point in that Venn diagram, if there's a I don't know what the three thing is called, but here at the Nerdery, we also focus on the technical implementation of those systems. So it's balancing the business goals with the user needs, and obviously how it's going to be developed and in what technology. So to get us started, and the thing that kind of brought about our topic for this talk, obviously, we are all pretty tied to our smartphones, and the statistics say that so is the rest of the world. In fact, as of March 2012, granted this is an old statistic, but over half of U.S. mobile subscribers owned smartphones.
And many of them sleep with their phones.
There are
Bedside
even
table, but that's where the charger is.
well, there are even apps that'll track your sleep patterns
true.
if you put them next to you. Go accelerometers. In the end, so mobile is so prevalent, and it's really created this frenzy for mobile apps and mobile web experiences. And in the end, it's our job to design successful products as user experience designers, as developers, as agencies, as freelancers. And part of that is identifying what type of thing in this grand landscape of mobile options is the right fit for the business. And there's a lot of factors that we'll be going through today. So the question becomes, how do you get started? How do you figure out what's right? And how do you take a general statement like, hey, 50% of US mobile subscribers have smartphones, and turn that into something that's going to be beneficial to your business and useful to people?
Right. So that's what we're all about today, is how do we get that conversation started and make a smart decision?
We like to start things with decision flows.
Yay.
Yay. So, part one of the decision process is validating this idea that you need a mobile thing. The statistics say that there's tons of people on mobile. In fact, Megan, you have a statistic about the percentage of those people that are exclusively using their smartphone.
Yeah, I think in the US, and I think it's fairly consistent kind of internationally as well, is that about 30% of people only access the internet via a smartphone. So that's the only way they're getting online. And for a lot of those people, the internet is broken because there are so many sites that don't really give them a good experience.
And from a global perspective, that statistic only increases
Yes,
the
yep.
farther you get from the first world.
Yep.
A mobile device is your computer.
Right.
Yes. And broadband is so expensive. So people, even if they have a computer, they're not using it to access the internet. They're using their phone.
Mm-hmm.
So we like to be sensitive to people, and those people are people,
users.
So it is a true, there is a need for most businesses to have some sort of mobile presence, but kind of the approach that they take, and even the timing of such a thing, it can sometimes can be up for contention. So the first thing that you want to do when you get the request, oh my God, we need a mobile app, or if you, a business owner, are thinking to yourself, we've been told that we need a mobile thing. What we like to do first is to try and find the source of the request, to get all the way up to that CEO or to, the individual business owner who came up with the idea that they needed to go mobile. And in order to do so, we do something called stakeholder interviews.
Yes, and those, as Hannah likes to say, are really just a fancy term for meetings with people that matter to your project. So we want to meet with the key project decision makers, which are often, the CEO or the business owner, whoever might that be, plus people kind of down the pike from that person as well. So we really want to get in touch with subject matter experts, anybody that can inform not only where the request came from, but how realistic or legitimate it might be.
And you have a spreadsheet or a worksheet that you send out specifically to inform stakeholders.
I do. I have my clients fill out something that just kind of get the name and the title of the people and what role they're playing on the project. So are they the decision maker? Are they an influencer? Will they be doing implementation at some point? And then try to understand what they're going to be most concerned about. So when I go to talk to them, I can alleviate some of their fears about things they might be afraid of, but also ask the right questions. Make sure I'm asking the right people the right questions. So we want to understand, what are the goals of having a mobile thing? What is, what's motivating that decision? How will it make them successful, and how will they know if they succeed? Make sure that everybody's on the same page. That's one of the most important things that we can do on a project, is help our clients get alignment. So we want to make sure that we talk to the people at the beginning, but then keep talking to them throughout the project. And then taking really detailed notes that we can reference later. And we usually summarize what we learned in some sort of a document, so that we have a record of a point in time that helped kind of inform why we made the decisions we did at that point in time.
And do we discuss at all, insulating yourself against surprise stakeholders or someone that can pull the plug on a project real early?
Yeah, what I like to say, and we've certainly had situations here at the Nerdery where somebody wasn't looped in early enough, and it turns out that they are actually influential in terms of the project, or maybe they're just financing the whole thing, and they kind of come out later and say, wait, that's not what I had in mind. Those we like to mitigate that risk by kind of trying to identify all of those stakeholders early on and making sure that people feel involved throughout the entire process. It can also happen where you may have had somebody involved in a beginning meeting, but if you're not touching base with them regularly, and their opinions aren't being heard, they don't feel like they're in the loop, or they don't feel like they can speak up. So again, to Megan's point, it's a mix of both subject matter experts, people who are really invested in the project, maybe the people who are in charge of the ultimate success within the company or financing it, and then the people who may have some context but aren't in that key decision role, or even people who are implementing it on the technical side.
And that's where your detailed notes, not I would
Mhm.
imagine it's not just for reference, but it's also saying, all right, all you stakeholders, here's some of our initial findings or bullet points or in summary. I'd
Yep.
imagine there's some level of communication at that
Yeah,
point
there's
as well.
two types of stakeholders that are really super important. The one is the ambassadors. So the people that you'll be able to count on to sort of say, yes, this is a great idea. Maybe they have the CFO's ear, that sort of thing. And then the derailers, the people that you talked about. If you can convert derailers to ambassadors, then you've got a really strong foundation for your project.
Well, cool. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So after you've had some initial conversations with the key stakeholders, preferably the person who said, "Oh my God, we need a mobile app," you should be able to answer the question, "Why do we need a mobile app, and what is it going to do?" Now, this is kind of where our flow diverges a little bit. On one side, on the nice side, without the picture, you'll hear from those stakeholders that they have a solid idea or a solid product that they're trying to launch, a mobile product idea, maybe it's a game, or basically just some other well thought out idea where it's clear to you that they've spent a significant amount of time upfront kind of talking about this internally and researching and doing the legwork. This is true for a lot of our agency projects that we get, not all of them certainly, but many of our partners come to us and they've done the upfront strategy work with the client, and they have a solid idea, and they've even done some research. So in this kind of less dramatic side of the flow, what we do at this point then is we learn more about the business needs and objectives, and we would conduct more stakeholder interviews. We'd have lots of meetings with the partner or client to really understand what it is that their idea, where their idea came from. Essentially, what we're trying to do is get a brain dump so that we can become subject matter experts in their business with their idea, and then apply all of our user experience and technical knowledge to solve the problem.
And that's another reason why, sometimes people wonder, well, we've already done the discovery and the research. Why can't you guys just take what we have and move forward with that? And the answer is that sometimes we can, but we almost always like to build in at least a little bit more discovery so that we can kind of really get immersed in whatever it is that we'll be building and what the ideas are. We feel like we're just much better prepared to offer smart solutions, the more immersed we're able to get in the business.
On the other side, we have the situation where we go into these meetings and we hear from the stakeholders or from the project initiator, that they just need something mobile, and they need it right now. And
Say it.
mobile, all the things. Basically, the request has come out of just a general understanding that mobile is a thing, or maybe the CEO's nephew came and said, "Hey, you need an app in the App Store."
And can I build it?
And can I build it? No,
For money.
honestly, we have heard just the whole range of people coming in and just saying, "Well, we need a mobile." We
And
need
most of the time, though,
mobile.
I find that it's perfectly reasonable. A certain level of expectation is that they're coming in, and I've yet to see any like super crazy. I mean, there's crazier requests, but usually, there's a good reason why they want to go mobile. It's just which mobile thing should you do. I mean, there's going to be instances which we're going to talk about in which maybe now is not the right time. But,
Right.
you know, I
Mhm.
mean, the statistics are very clear that some kind of mobile thing is not throwing money into a hole.
No, absolutely not. And what we love is when people come to us and they say, mobile all the things and show us the right way to do it. You know,
Right,
it's
right.
it's great to have a client that's just really enthusiastic and knows that there is a need out there, but is willing to listen to us and kind of allow us to take them down the process of figuring out what's going to be right for them and the timing again, like you mentioned.
Yeah, there's definitely a continuum between we just need something mobile and oh, we don't need mobile because no one would ever use our stuff on a mobile device. And that's an assumption you can't make either. So you really do need to dig in, figure out what's really happening.
So, in the mobile all the things route, the first thing you need to ask is whether you need a mobile thing at all. And this is kind of a trick question because the answer is probably going to be yes, but the timing, the question really should be, do we need a mobile thing right now, and is it as urgent and exactly what we think it's going to be? Would be more appropriate. This was shorter and more concise. The first thing we need to do to be able to answer this question is to kind of look at what else is out there from the competitors.
Yeah, so we always do a competitive analysis, and this can be as detailed or not detailed as you want it to be, depending on your budget and what you're trying to learn. But finding out what are your competitors offering from a mobile perspective? Do they offer apps, and what are those apps for or do? Do they have a website that is optimized for mobile, or is it responsive? Are their presences successful? So can we tell if people are downloading their apps and what kind of ratings and reviews they're getting? A lot of times competitors, you might be able to do research with your own users to get a sense of competitors too, because they have lots of opinions. You'll want to kind of figure out, is your reputation going to be damaged by the lack of a mobile presence if everybody has one and you don't? But then conversely, if you don't do it right, is your reputation going to be damaged by having kind of a not so great mobile presence? So thinking through that. And one of the most important things is thinking about, is there a gap that you can fill, some sort of opportunity that makes sense to become more of a leader in your industry and kind of being the person who leads the way for your industry.
And again, the competitive analysis exercise benefits both you, the client, and us because we get to understand more of who your business is and what's kind of space you exist in, right? And so again, the competitive analysis, it could have formal documentation where we could present you with kind of some options of what to do based on what we see your competitors doing, or it might just be kind of us doing a quick dig into what else is out there so that we can be more intelligent when we have our conversations with you about where to go next.
And I'd say that there's a lot of different camps for the mobiles too. Like as far as doing a competitive analysis, you've got the easy one is your competitor works with consumers just like you want to, right? It's like you can go to the app store, you can look at what they're offering, but then there's a lot of mobile applications that are built for deployed sales forces. So sometimes it's, you know, does your competitor use a mobile application in their sales presentations? And some of that's going to be hard. And then there's the intranet use, right? So like an internal metrics tool, maybe it's a handheld device for monitoring something or speaking to equipment. You know, there's a whole wide variety of different
Yeah.
mobile things. So
Yeah, and I think an important thing maybe to mention is that we're mostly talking about, just for simplicity, we're mostly talking about somebody who has a website that may or may not have some functionality that it does. There's all kinds of other things that you might be asked to build that might have nothing to do with a website. It might be a tool, it might be, some of the things that Ryan mentioned. But most of the time we say website just because it's kind of easier to focus in on something.
Yeah, a fun something too that can come out of a competitive analysis. Occasionally, when we're talking about something like a game or a Facebook app or something, we'll go out and we'll start doing a little bit of digging around and we'll see that the idea that our client has might already be out there. And so then our role in the project is to kind of shape and grow the idea and differentiate it from what the competitors are doing.
Right.
Again, the competitive advantage and finding that gap to fill where the space is just out there.
I think that's my favorite part about the client side interactions when someone comes in with their mobile idea. There's a lot of me too, me too. And what's saying is, well, so and so, they've got an app, so we need to do I want to do that. Or, we start talking about the feature set. And once you can start, and once we have the opportunity to start talking about, well, how can we do it better than the
Yes.
competitor did?
Mhm.
Or where did their shortcomings come in? It actually becomes kind of fun. It's
is
not
fun.
just a
Yep.
keep up with the Joneses, but it really is. It's not that hard to identify low-hanging fruit and maybe simplify the app, but do it better. Do those things better. So websites are, I'd say, fairly similar too.
Yeah.
And I think we often have to caution our clients from going to every other site, even if it's not a competitor, but just like for e-commerce, for instance, saying, well, these people do it this way. And the kind of caveat is there's a lot of stuff out there that's not good. And so you can't just say, oh, well, we should do it how so and so does it, because how so and so does it might be really bad. So that's another thing that we sort of do along with competitive analysis, is sort of a heuristic analysis to see whether what they're doing is worthwhile, and does it follow user experience best practices and that sort of thing. You don't want to copy something bad.
Well, right, or something that's not targeted to your users. It might be a
Right.
cool feature, but your user base might be totally different than the user base of that site that had that cool feature. It's all about, is it going to be useful as well? So,
Right.
and that kind of also goes into the next topic, which is we want to take a look at the features that your current website has. So we'll be looking at, whether the functionality that you have on your current website could translate easily and well to a mobile space. Whether you have, for example, advanced tools that would warrant, maybe taking a look at a scaled down version that would work really well for mobile. Are there particular tasks that people would likely be trying to do out in the field or on a mobile device? And then obviously, is there an opportunity to kind of expand your offerings or to make things even easier for your users by going mobile? It's a great opportunity when you're starting a project like this to say, hey, when we built our site in 2006, we weren't able to implement this one thing because it was too hard. But now that we have different technology, is this the time that we want to look at building something new and shiny?
Yes, and another really important thing here is to document whether you are in control of the features that are on your site. So if you're using third-party people for e-commerce, or maybe for, like chat support, that sort of thing, you're not going to likely be able to influence whether they're set up for mobile. So you have to, kind of take into consideration, does that mean I need to build my own? I need to stop using that third party and do something on my own? Or can we not do some of the things that we would want to do because the third party, there's limitations because of that?
And I'd say one thing that's really important to point out is that one of the reasons why UX has a developer involved from the very beginning, right, embedded development, is that I see a lot of partners where they want to have a chat feature or a particular e-commerce plugin, right? Their website is so old it doesn't even have any of these third-party plugins. But by having a developer at the very beginning, they can guide the proper decisions, like, oh, well, this company offers an API for mobile, or can go responsive, or can do a number of different things. So by identifying the appropriate third-party plugins from day one saves a ton of money, and frustrated stakeholders saying, well, I thought we were going to have this feature, and certain UI decisions were made
Right.
very early in the process.
Yeah, you said the money word, which is interesting. I talk about money all the time. When I'm talking about features with clients, one of the first things I think about is, is this something that's integral to your user's experience in mobile in this case? And then how expensive is it going to be to build? And when you're looking at mobile features specifically and restrictions of mobile devices, that's something to always have in mind. And again, the developer consultation that we do on a regular basis really helps with that. I mean, there might be something that would be really cool to have on mobile, but it's not going to be super essential for your users to have, and it's going to cost like half of your project budget.
Right.
Better to know that upfront when you're kind of just doing this initial feature inventory than to get really, really excited about it and learn later that it's just going to be very, very tough to implement within the budget.
Yep.
So,
Definitely.
so the third thing that we would want to do in order to kind of answer the question of whether we need a mobile thing at all is very valuable, because people love numbers and statistics and tangible data. The analytics review piece.
Yeah. So, assuming we're talking about a website again, looking at the analytics, most people have Google Analytics set up on their sites today. Catalyst is another place where people can do some of the kind of metrics and analysis. But
Omniture.
Omniture, yes.
Also good.
Site Catalyst, Omniture, yeah. So who looks at your site? You can look at where are people coming from a geographic location, other types of demographics that you can take a look at. What browsers are they using? Really important when you're considering responsive design, because some browsers just simply don't support it. So if you have, say, 75% of your users are coming from a corporation that only offers Internet Explorer 6, responsive design is going to be pretty tough for you. Kind of just cringed. What devices are they using? And devices are just getting way, 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 way more just diversified. And, you might say like 40%, 60% iPhone and 40% Android or something. But then within the Android, especially, there's like 700 different possible devices they could be coming from.
Right.
So figuring some of that out. Where are they coming from? What parts of the country are they coming from? A device or computer? And then what content are they looking at most frequently? Where are they landing via search? Are they coming direct? How long are they spending on the site? What are they searching for when they get to your site? So all kinds of things that can help you figure out what people want from you. A lot of figuring out the mobile thing is figuring out what do people expect from you. And if they don't expect a whole lot, then you might be able to start super small and grow from there.
Well, setting those expectations is incredibly important. And like Zach Naylor, one of our user researchers here at the Nerdery, uses the analytics specifically to inform certain decisions and then to ask the right questions of those user groups, following someone around the grocery store on how they use the grocery store's mobile application. What do they look up? How do they look it up? How many clicks does it take? And another thing that if you're building an app or if you build apps, one thing that here at the Nerder we found very helpful because of the device fragmentation that Megan was talking about is identifying primary device support and secondary device support. And what I mean by that is primary device support says we will the application, the website, the whichever that we're building will look awesome. It'll look great on Samsung Galaxy S3, S4, the Motorola whatever, the iPhone 5, the 4S, the iPad, right? So you set the list of these are what it's going to work on great every single time. Secondary device support saying these devices we recognize, we'll test for. It's not pixel perfect, but it'll work. It won't break. Anything outside of this list of mobile devices, if it's not on the list, we can't guarantee it's going to work. So you can get yourself in a very difficult position, especially when you've got the hidden stakeholder with the BlackBerry 10 or some random device that just doesn't have the market share. So setting that expectation up front is pretty important.
But the hard thing about that is you can't really look at market share overall. You really have to look at your users, because
Correct.
you can't really, in some cases, you can't afford to alienate the person on the BlackBerry. So you really want to, make sure that you're looking really closely at who your users are and making that list based on what your users are doing and not just based on the trends in the industry, which may not mimic your user base.
And again, the analytics review can also be really useful for highlighting some of the features or potential areas of your site that your users seem to expect that are mobile friendly. So, for example, at one point I worked on a project that had one of those like splash intro things, like the Flash, but it was in Flash, and they were looking at going mobile, and they're like, but we still want to have some sort of cool animation. And what we saw with their analytics is that just like the bounce rate on that first homepage was ridiculous, because people were coming to the site and seeing nothing for 15 seconds and then going away, and that nobody was searching for and going directly into any of the content pages within their site. They all expected to land on the homepage and be able to navigate from there. Whereas certain other experiences, if you had a website that had a user login area, maybe people get used to going just to the customer login, and you would see analytics showing that people are trying to click through and log in specifically to that page on the mobile device. Well, then you need to start taking a look at translating those specific features over to a mobile friendly experience as well.
Lots to think about.
So after you've done these kind of preliminary research tasks, you should be able to answer the question, do you need a mobile thing at all? And again, for the most part, just because of where we are with the current trends and statistics, yes, you probably do need a mobile thing. But to my earlier point, you might learn after doing these activities that the cost to entry is too great, or that the timing for doing a mobile thing right now is kind of off. And if you do learn that based on these activities that the need isn't so great that you need to drop every other company initiative, for example, to build that next mobile thing. Our job as your strategic partner is to help you kind of understand that. So it's the convince your boss, right? Sometimes it's just not the right choice.
Is that the right one?
Oh no, it's totally not the right
I'm
one.
sorry. I said I
No,
told
that's
Ryan
okay.
it was the right one,
That's
but I was
okay.
wrong.
In the
I can
case,
talk through it.
in the situation where you do have to say, make your case for, hey, this isn't the right time to do the mobile thing that you've been dreaming about. There are a lot of business decisions that usually go into that.
Yeah, so that's where I recommend that whether you're an internal employee working on a project or an external consultant or whoever you might be, that you really think about, put yourself in the shoes of a business person and thinking about what kind of impact this is going to have on the business. You don't need an MBA to be able to do this, but you need to understand how does money come in and how does money go out, and whether you can impact how those things happen with your project. So thinking about, is it just really not the right time because maybe a year from now you're planning on completely overhauling your site and you're going to go responsive because you know you need to go responsive. So maybe you just do all of your homework, and then by the time you're ready to do that, you're ready to go and you've thought through a lot of things. Or maybe trying to think of another
Maybe you have the
example.
opportunity to kind of stand up a mini prototype of like a game that you want to develop, and you're not ready to go to market with it yet because there's a lot
Yep.
of strategy and game planning and design work that still needs to be done, but you kind of want to test the waters with the concept and maybe get some funding for it. It's good to know kind of where you stand in the larger ecosystem before making the decision to go full bore ahead.
Right. And with, looking at the return on investment. So with the mobile, all the things perspective, and let's say someone really wants an app, or even if someone comes and says an app, but really your site is just content and there's no kind of repeat visitor use very often, and there's no tasks that need to be repeated often, that an app just might not get you anything besides an extra thing that you have to manage, or even a mobile version of your site. Well, if we find that maybe 2% of your visitors get to your site, and we also know that your company is similarly named to something else, so we don't even know if those visitors are actually looking for you. So like all of those things to figure out, are you really going to get the profit or the some sort of results out of your investment, because it can be a big investment.
And again, it's our responsibility to let you know about these things, right? So of course we want to build you a successful product, and in order to really ensure that the product that we develop is not only good looking but also going to be aligned with your business and what it needs to do. Sometimes we do make the recommendation that, hey, maybe you should set this money aside for next quarter and wait,
Mhm.
or take a look at hiring another person to manage all the content that's going to be on this new mobile thing. There's just a lot of considerations, and we
Right.
want to be sensitive to the business needs.
Yeah,
Two
typically we're going to be trying to help you make the right decision. And if you decide after, even with our, what we say, that you want to build the thing, we will build the thing.
there's two
But we're going to try to get you going down the right path. Sorry, Ryan.
No, it's not a problem. There's two really good questions that came in.
Oh, great.
I already responded with a kind of a quick chat request. I'll go through these real quickly. The first one is, does HTML5 really solve the problem with OS diversity, operating system diversity? And my answer to the poster was, it depends on the application, right? HTML5 apps are really good for like doing a thing really, really well, but it doesn't, if you're needing certain native features, we're going to cover some of these pieces. But prototyping your particular piece, we do a lot of prototyping here of how that,
Yep.
how HTML5 has worked. And the second one that we want to address is the iOS versus Droid, right? The actual costs. Like, do you have to do this twice?
Yeah.
And I generally find there's three buckets. There's visual design, there's database, and there's backend. And there's the front end, the visual designs are different for Android and iOS. You can reuse some visual components, but for the most part, you are doing two completely different sets of designs. For the back end, you're doing one build for Android, one build for iOS. There's really no way to get around it.
They're completely different
They're
languages.
completely different
Right.
languages. But the middle ground, the database, it could be the server in the middle that puts out data.
A
There's
content management system, for
Right.
example, that's feeding both
Yep.
of the native applications.
There you can do development in one place, and as
Sure.
long as you're anticipating doing both, you're not having to duplicate that effort. So it's not a quite double the cost, but there are some components you can reuse. But
Well, and
you
Apple's
know,
more strict as well about what
Yeah,
apps they'll
yeah.
accept. So something that you developed for Android, let's say you go Android first, and then you decide you want to do the same thing for the App Store, might not be accepted.
Right. We get a lot of requests for, hey, rebuild this iOS app, but for Android, and keep the design the same. Those are difficult requests because there are reasons that there are iOS design standards and Android design standards. And for a long time, Android was kind of like the Wild West, and there was a lot of variance in the design of elements. But you'll see there's definitely a trend towards a more standardized visual aesthetic, and that's just good for the user. It's just
Yep.
plain nice when all of your Google Android apps have the same kind of button styles and the same UI elements, and drop downs work the same, and notifications work
Yep.
the same. So it is typically a double design effort because we want to be sensitive to how users expect to interact with their own platform.
Yeah, in HTML5, the easy one is it depends.
I would answer that question a little bit more specifically. I think HTML5, there have been a lot of advancements kind of with what you can do with HTML5. HTML5 local storage cuts down on the hard and fast rule that if you need to access something or store something offline on your phone, you have to be native. But there are limitations to that as well.
Yep.
Local storage is capped at a certain amount. And still, things like trying to access your phone's camera layer, for example, have to be done through the native operating system with a native app. So HTML5 is great, and there are lots of applications for using some of the cool like Canvas functionality for games, but it's not the be-all, end-all solution, and there are still things that a native app will do better.
Yep. And if you wanted to hear about games in HTML5, we recently had a Nerdcast on non-native game development. So it specifically talks about that. So you can go ahead and check that on iTunes.
Yeah.
And I would say resist the urge to build some sort of new way of doing things on either operating system because you want to be different. Because as Hannah said, you really do want to give users something that they can expect. If you have to explain to them how to navigate through your app, that's probably trouble.
So the yes, we need a mobile thing down here, and the we've learned all about your grand idea on the easy path side. God, that seems forever ago.
I know.
What we do now need to ask ourselves is, okay, we know we need a mobile thing. We've validated that. What type of mobile thing do we need to build? And we'll get into kind of the difference, the iOS versus Android and the native versus mobile in this second decision flow. We really love these things. So once we've decided that we need a thing, what we like to do is now engage the client in a little bit of a different way and start really focusing in on the types of features and the functionality and what we want this thing to do. This is where clients get really excited because they want to tell us and they want to brainstorm with us. And so what we usually suggest, or what I like to suggest, is some sort of collaborative working session or a workshop or something to kind of get all of those ideas out in the open.
Yes. So this is where we get to bring in a lot of people. This is where you want to bring in all of those stakeholders, both the ambassadors and the derailers and people who will be implementing, and be super collaborative across the organization about what you need, what you want this thing to do. And it's really important to have the technologists in the room and the people who will be implementing, especially from a technology perspective, not to say, no, we can't do that just yet, but to understand the types of things that the ideas that people have so they can start thinking about the technological solution. We want to understand a little bit more about the context. So how does this impact the business and what will it do for them? Also understanding the user's context. People always have a lot of assumptions about their users, and they can usually tell us quite a bit about them. This is what gives us sort of an entry point into user research, which we'll talk about later. Whenever possible, we like to do it, but kind of get some assumptions about our users on the board. We like to do empathy maps, that sort of thing. Generate ideas, kind of the the must-haves versus the nice-to-haves versus the, oh my God, wouldn't it be awesome if, and a place to get all of those ideas and opinions out in the open in kind of a safe way so that everybody feels involved.
Yeah, and the brainstorming or workshopping or whatever you want to call it, I think we call it a new thing every month, can take many different forms depending on kind of where you are in the project. So earlier when I mentioned maybe an agency partner comes to us and they've done a lot of the upfront strategy work and we're ready to move forward and just kind of like finalize the idea. This collaborative working session could take the format of, hey, let's all get together in a room and start sketching some stuff and visualizing some stuff. Or it can be, hey, we still really only know that we need to do a mobile something. We know what our competitors are doing. Let's have just an open brainstorming session about what our thing could be. So very, very different uses for what can be, again, a very different experience in working with us.
Yep. And you can use brainstorming throughout your project. It doesn't just have to come at this phase.
That also happens where just during the sales engagement too. We have
Mhm.
solutions engineers where that's like, I don't want to call it free consulting, but it's someone who knows enough to be dangerous and can even bring in subject matter experts
Mhm.
to facilitate those early conversations. So when you say how much, those people can kind of narrow things down enough to where they can tell you approximately what the investment would be for that mobile thing that you want to do. So
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing we really try to do is encourage our sales folks to, unless there is a pretty fully baked idea and it's really just sort of make us the best thing that you can make, we know exactly what we want. But when clients come to us and they're not exactly sure what they want, we would prefer to kind of spend some time at the beginning, paid time, figuring out what is the best thing for you to be doing, and then we can help you build it. And that actually a lot of times is cheaper than just saying build us this thing and then finding out at some point down the road that that thing's not going to work for whatever reason.
well, it's funny about I think about UX sometimes is that it's actually actively trying to reduce the scope of the project,
Yes.
not make it bigger, right?
Yeah.
The early engagement is how many things can we add, and UX is saves you money by saying, is this really relevant? Nope, it's gone. Is this really worth it in phase one? Nope, let's push it off. And so I really appreciate that part of the UX process, is that it's the advocate for the end user in the business in that
Right.
regard.
I mean, first of all, I've never had a client come to me and say, I have an unlimited amount of money, build me a thing.
Right. Never
If they
happened.
did, I'd probably look at them and I'd be like, no, you don't, and don't spend it all, because
Right.
you should still have an experience. We should still work on building an experience that's going to be the core of what your user needs to do and really honing in on that. There is such a thing as too much stuff.
Yep.
And so, yes, in that way, even these brainstorming and workshops, which can sometimes seem kind of nebulous in what we're talking about in the activities, everything that we're doing in those is really all with the focus of getting us to a core feature set that we can then implement.
And
Right.
doing too much to begin with too could also make it hard to measure the success of the application.
And maintain it. So
One
you
of-
might have a budget that goes on forever, but you have to maintain the thing over time.
We do have a question about how do you measure the success of an application. Is there a simple answer to that?
Sometimes metrics. It really depends on what the client is perceiving. Sometimes they're trying to make more sales because of their app. Sometimes there's a contact form at the end of watching a presentation or something. It really depends on what the client is perceiving as the success metrics. We always like it when we can tip our hat and say, hey, we took your site from having X unique visitors a month to Y, and Y is a much bigger number. But it's usually on an individual kind of business decision basis.
Yeah. And metrics can be really misleading and you need to pick the right one. So, a lot of times, so take SEO, for example, people say we need to SEO everything and make sure more and more people come to our site. But if more and more of the wrong people come to your site, it actually doesn't do anything for your business. Your SEO really didn't matter that much. So really thinking about what are the key performance indicators? What are you trying to measure? What are you trying to accomplish? And then figuring out the metrics that support that. So page views may or may not be a good one. Bounce rate may even, people always think, oh, well, they didn't bounce as fast. Well, if it's the contact us page and they just wanted your phone number, that's okay, because you want them to bounce.
Because
they
then
got
they
what they
called
needed.
you, and then they came into your store, and then they bought
Sometimes
the
it is
things.
like reading the tea leaves.
Yeah, a little
right?
bit. I mean, you have to be strategic about, and you also need to consider more than one just analytics is not enough to measure success. So you want to look at analytics, you want to look at user research, you want to maybe do some heuristic analysis, you can look at reviews if it's in the App Store. I mean, there's kind of this whole puzzle of things that contribute to success.
I personally have never had a project that I worked on that where the value of the work came under question after it was out in the wild. So I think that does say something for, again, just the upfront strategic process that we go through and making sure that what we're designing is going to have a benefit to the business.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
So the other thing that we like to do here, once we've decided upon the thing and we've heard from the core team what they want to build and all the cool features, we want to kind of gauge those against what the users, what the actual potential or current users of their site want from it. So we do user research.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways that you can do user research, many types and tactics. Here we're kind of looking at what do users want and need from you and validating some of the assumptions that the business made. So you can do interviews and I don't love focus groups, interviews, surveys. You can do diary studies where you have people kind of tell you what they're up to. So there's lots of different ways to do that. Understand their context, really get into the mind of the user and what they're going to need. Later on, you can also do usability testing to see if what you're building is on the right track.
So once you've kind of looked at, again, we know our business goals, we learned all that up front, we know our user goals, we should be able to answer kind of a preliminary question, which is there a cool new product opportunity or a tool or utility that users need? And this is kind of hinting at the fact that there are usually some different use cases for building a native app versus a mobile website. And the next thing that we do here is really dig into those features or those requirements, because as you'll learn on the next slide, the features that you want your mobile thing to have and its purpose very much influence which one of these paths you go down. So the biggest question we get asked, honestly, is what's the difference between a native app and a mobile optimized or responsive website? And people use these terms interchangeably all the time: app, site, responsive, mobile, optimized, MDOT. We want to educate our clients, and what we do, at least what I do, is as I'm going through the features of a site, I like to be mentally cataloging whether that's a feature that's going to work best in a mobile space or whether it's something that requires or would work better in a native application sense.
And you can overlay that stuff in Hannah's head with the feature prioritization that you've already done to kind of figure out, most important feature is more applicable to native. So that might start to suggest where you go.
And a lot of it also comes down to budget too. So for the native application camp, some of the most important things to look at are whether the features that you are requesting need to leverage the phone's hardware capabilities. So again, the camera that I mentioned, the accelerometer, which for those of you who don't know that term, that's the thing that gauges like how you're tilting and moving the phone. Whether your application is going to have a very strong task-based interaction, like you go in and you fill out a thing or you enter a timesheet entry or you set a clock or whatever. And then also, whether there's going to be a lot of repeated access. My example here, I use one of those calorie tracking apps, and I tried to use the mobile site for a little bit, but those few seconds extra that it took me to launch the mobile site versus just like hitting up the app, I switched to the app almost immediately. Offline access and storage. Again, we answered the HTML5 question. Can you do some stuff with HTML5 local storage? Yes. But if you need a lot of repeated offline access and a lot of storage without having to sync up to the cloud somewhere, you should probably be looking native. And then finally, are you expecting to be able to distribute your app or your thing through the App Store? Do you want that as a mechanism for delivery, and do you want people to be able to find you there? If yes, go native.
Yes, and then on the other side, and of course there are times where it's hard to make this decision, and you might end up with an app and a mobile optimized site depending on kind of what your needs are and what you learn. But some of the pros of mobile optimized or responsive is that it's cross-platform, so it can be used across devices. Of course, there are browser things to keep in mind, so you always want to be thinking about that, especially if you're doing kind of a mobile version of your site for a very specific purpose. The cost to entry can be quite a bit lower. But if you're looking to rebuild your entire site to make it responsive, that's usually fairly expensive. But the good thing there is that it's a really good opportunity to cull out your site and figure out what you really, really, really need. And a lot of times what you really, really, really need is really just this, kind of thinking about, if I were using this on mobile, that's the same stuff people need on desktop. So it's a good opportunity to kind of slim down. And then the other thing for mobile or responsive is if it's really mostly information based. So there's not a lot of interactivity, there's not a lot of tasks, that can be super important. And one thing that's one of the statistics right now is that people prefer to read news in the browser instead of like CNN's app or that sort of thing. So when it's
Interesting
just
stuff.
information, people would rather browse.
Just a real quick question that I think is pertinent, how difficult it is to get apps approved through Apple. And the easy question here is that Apple does not want a wrapper of your website. It wants it wants to see an actual use of the hardware, the camera, the GPS. There needs to be something. It can't just be an app filled with information.
And it can't drain the battery.
Real
Another big
people,
one.
so there are real people that review the apps, and what they're looking for is something that has substantial value to the user, and preferably something that one of their own offerings doesn't already have.
Right.
That's another point. Are you doing something that Apple's already done? Well, probably not a good idea. That being said, obviously there are rules about complying with their design standards. But if we've gotten you to this point, your idea should be sound, and we should be talking about something that's providing value to the user. And at that point, it's just about making sure that you're working within their design constraints and things.
And keeping on top of when they're changing, and building in some extra time into your timeline for the approval process.
And there's never a guarantee, but when you bring an iOS developer in from the get-go, they can vet an idea right off the bat saying, ooh, that's a risk. They'll identify it as a risk, saying, I think this might not go through for the following reasons. So anyways.
Definitely.
So if you've decided, based on kind of identifying what your features are, that you want to go the native app route, you need to then make the decision whether you're going to go iOS, so iPhone, iPad, or Android, and tablet or phone or BlackBerry or Windows Mobile. And again, to make that decision, we usually recommend just taking another look at your analytics, seeing who your users are, what their primary device is. Usually the highest percentage wins. Again, there are cases where you don't want to alienate people, but we do typically recommend that you design for and develop for one platform, and then maybe you do iPhone first, and then you come out with Android in 6 months after you've learned some things about your iPhone app, and B, gotten some additional investment or capital built up to do that second
When
version.
you're dealing with consumers, there's lots of questions to ask based off of analytics and stuff. When it's just an internal business, if you're a smaller business, you typically control what devices your employees have.
Exactly.
So you can just do one. And then if you're a huge, enormous company, like 3M is rolling out a bunch of HTML5 apps because they're global. Right? There's language concerns, there's devices, there's all sorts of reasons why you'd want to be as cross-platform as possible. So again, size and scope and time all play into those decisions.
Lots of things again to consider. We're simplifying it quite a bit.
And then on the other side, if you decide that a mobile website is the appropriate delivery of your content and features, you need to ask the question whether to go responsive design or mobile optimized. So
or some sort of hybrid between the two.
Single code base, flexing and scaling to the size of your browser, or a specific targeted unique feature and content site. And for this one, again, we're back to this whole business analysis thing. We really just want to take a look at, what the ROI and success metrics are going to be, what your overall goals and objectives are. Does it make sense to overhaul your entire website to go responsive right now, or should you wait? And again, to all you front-end developers out there, yes, in the UX world, we always advocate for building and architecting from the ground up, mobile first. And there is no such thing as, hey, I have this existing site, will you responsify it?
There is no responsive button.
Button.
There is one, I think, in some of but it don't do that.
Don't do that. Right. So after you've kind of gone through these exercises, you should be solidly within one of these camps: iOS, Android, or responsive or mobile optimized. And well, what do we do now? Well, we do the rest of the project.
We build the thing.
Which is, again, it's all the fun part, but we get to the thing that I think is the most fun after this upfront project planning and strategy and requirements definition is done.
Yep. And so, yeah, that's where we're really getting into, how is it going to be organized and what is it going to do and what is it going to look like and hopefully launching.
Yeah. Yep. Make
So
the thing pretty.
We had to wrap that up
and
pretty quickly.
build the
yeah,
thing.
I actually want to get Hannah's response on this one. What is your view on using a tool like PhoneGap? I've got my own answer.
I actually originally in a previous version of this deck here had a had the word phone gap, and then had a big red circle come over it with an X mark through it. My personal opinion is, again, that you want to be designing for either the native application, the native platform, and what the users expect in that native space, or doing something that is mobile web and cross-platform that upholds web standards. Trying to, again, retrofit something that will basically, for the sole purpose of just saving money. I've never heard any other reason to do PhoneGap other than, well, we can get both iPhone and Android for less money. And that's just not being sensitive to your users.
Well, it's also, there's support considerations, finding someone that knows how to program in. So when you want to add in phase 2 or make some feature fixes, all things are not created equal. A feature may not function the same in both aspects.
I've never met a developer who liked it either.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, I'd say 99% of the
See if I
time,
can find one?
it's more effective to look at the native or look at the web experience.
Absolutely.
So,
Definitely.
yeah, we've looked at a lot of we call it a rescue project. That someone says, "Help! I had someone make this for me." And when we see a lot of PhoneGap projects come in, and we'll make changes if necessary, but it's unfortunate
hard to
how
work
many
with
how
it.
many times it's just not the right fit. So
Yep.
anyway. We actually were able to get all of our questions in
good.
line throughout the whole presentation. So
Wonderful.
everyone, I want to thank you all for tuning in to this month's Design Science. And until next time, do you have anything else you'd like to add in before we conclude this webinar?
I don't think so, other than just be sensitive to your users.
Yes. And your business. Do not break the bank for something stupid.
And consult with your developers, because they know far more than you think they know, and some of them are even really awesome at providing assistance with design constraints and stuff.
And they even
So
want to save you money.
they do
Yes,
want to. We all want to
they do.
save you
They
money.
want to find the best way to do it, and then if there's a way they can do that, they'll figure it out.
Thank you, everyone, so much. Again, if there's a question we didn't answer, please email us at primers@nerdery.com, and I will see that question goes to both Hannah and Megan, and they can answer back. So if you did enjoy this or you'd like to hear more, please share this with #DesignScience on the Twitters, and we'd really appreciate the continued promotion of what we're doing. And I also would urge you, if there is a topic you'd like us to discuss in a future Design Science or a primer, let us know. It's primers@nerdery.com. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thanks.